Welcome back to US Rare Coins News. Could an ordinary Eagle $quarter hiding in your collection be worth much more than 25 cents? The year, mint mark, condition, and especially rare errors can make a huge difference in value. So before you spend one, take a closer look. In this video, we'll reveal the key details every coin collector should know. And don't forget to subscribe to US Rare Coins News. Top 1. What if a quarter sitting quietly in your old coin collection could turn out to be far more interesting than it looks? A 1971 Washington quarter may appear to be nothing more than an ordinary 25-cent coin, but when you look closely at its date, mint mark, condition, surfaces, and overall quality, the story can become much more fascinating. More than 5 decades have passed since these quarters were produced, and that makes them an interesting piece of American coinage history. So if you have a 1971 Washington quarter, don't spend it just yet. Take it out, place it under good lighting, and follow along because in this video we're going to examine exactly what you should look for. Let's begin with the basic specifications. The 1971 Washington quarter has a standard weight of approximately 5.67 grams, a diameter of 24.26 millimeters, and a thickness of about 1.75 millimeters. The coin is made from copper nickel-clad material, with a copper core and outer layers containing copper and nickel. The obverse features the famous portrait of George Washington, while the reverse shows the American eagle surrounded by the inscriptions that identify the United States and the denomination. These familiar designs make the Washington quarter one of the most recognizable coins in American history. Now let's talk about one of the most interesting details on this particular coin, the mint mark. If your 1971 Washington quarter has no mint mark, that does not automatically mean the coin is missing something or that it is an error. Quarters struck at the Philadelphia Mint during this period were produced without a mint mark. So when you find a 1971 quarter with no mint mark, you are looking at a Philadelphia issue. This is an important detail for collectors because the mint mark, or lack of one, helps identify where a coin was produced. But here's where you need to be careful. Simply having a 1971 quarter with no mint mark does not automatically make it extremely rare or extraordinarily valuable. Millions of Washington quarters were produced, and many examples still exist today. The real question is what condition your individual coin is in and whether it has any legitimate characteristics that make it stand out from a normal example. This is why experienced collectors don't judge a coin simply by looking at its age. Take a close look at the date. Is the 1971 clearly visible? Are the digits sharp and well defined? Next, examine Washington's portrait. Look at the hair, facial details, lettering, and surrounding surfaces. A coin that has spent decades circulating will normally show signs of wear, contact marks, and scratches. On the other hand, a well-preserved example may retain much more of its original detail and mint luster. These differences can have a major impact on how collectors evaluate a coin. Now turn the quarter over and inspect the reverse. The American eagle should have clear details, and the lettering should appear properly formed. Look carefully around the stars, inscriptions, eagle, and the edges of the design. You are looking for anything that appears genuinely different from the normal design. However, there is an important warning here: not every strange-looking mark is a mint error. A scratch, hit, gouge, stain, or other damage that happened after the coin left the mint is not the same thing as a true minting error. This is one of the biggest mistakes new collectors make. They see doubling, an unusual mark, or damaged lettering and immediately assume they have discovered a rare error coin. In reality, determining whether something is a genuine mint error can require careful examination and sometimes professional authentication. So don't clean the coin, don't polish it, and don't try to alter the surface to make unusual details more visible. Original surfaces are extremely important to collectors. Condition is another major factor. Imagine two 1971 Washington quarters sitting next to each other. Both have the same date, both are Philadelphia coins, and both have no mint mark. One has been heavily circulated for decades, while the other has been carefully preserved and shows excellent detail and attractive original surfaces. Even though the date and basic design are identical, collectors may view these two coins very differently. This is why grading is so important in the world of coin collecting. Professional grading services evaluate factors such as wear, surface preservation, strike quality, luster, and overall appearance. Coins that survive in exceptionally high grades can be much more desirable than ordinary circulated examples. Professional price guides show that certified high-grade 1971 Philadelphia Washington quarters can bring significantly more collector interest than common worn examples. Another thing to remember is that age alone does not determine rarity. A coin can be more than 50 years old and still be relatively common. What matters is the combination of age, surviving population, condition, demand, mint origin, and any recognized varieties or errors. That's why the best strategy is not to assume every old quarter is valuable, but to learn what characteristics actually matter. Now think about where your 1971 quarter came from. Was it handed down through your family? Did you discover it in an old collection? Maybe you found it in a box of coins that had been sitting untouched for years. These stories are part of what makes coin collecting so enjoyable. Every old coin has traveled through someone's hands, and you never know where it has been or what history is attached to it. If you are searching through a collection right now, I recommend checking every 1971 quarter individually rather than looking at only one example. Compare their condition, surfaces, details, and overall appearance. Sometimes the most interesting coin in a group isn't the one that looks the oldest. It can be the one with the best preservation or the unusual characteristic that makes collectors stop and take a second look. And if you think you have discovered something unusual, don't rush to sell it based on a number you saw in a social media post or YouTube thumbnail. Coin values can vary dramatically depending on the exact specimen, condition, certification, and current collector demand. A headline price is not automatically the same thing as the amount every example of that coin is worth. For this video, the headline figure we are highlighting is $130,000. But it is extremely important to understand that this is not the normal value of an ordinary circulated 1971 Washington quarter. A genuine selling price depends on the exact coin and its characteristics. Always verify extraordinary valuations through reputable auction records, professional grading information, and reliable numismatic sources before assuming that your coin is worth the same amount. So, if you have a 1971 Washington quarter with no mint mark, take another look at it today. Check the date, examine Washington's portrait, inspect the reverse, study the surfaces, and look for genuine mint-made characteristics. Don't clean the coin, don't polish it, and don't throw it back into your change jar until you've had a chance to examine it properly. And now I want to hear from you. Do you have a 1971 Washington quarter in your collection? Does your coin have no mint mark? Is it circulated, or does it still look surprisingly sharp and well preserved? And do you have any of the other coins that I show in my videos? Tell me in the comments below. I would love to know what coins you have discovered, because your comment could help another collector recognize an interesting coin in their own collection. If you enjoy Washington quarters, rare U.S. coins, valuable coins, mint errors, and fascinating stories from American coin collecting, make sure you subscribe to U.S. Rare Coins News and turn on notifications. I have many more coins to show you, and some of them may be hiding in ordinary collections, old coin jars, or boxes that have been sitting untouched for years. So before you spend your old coins, always take a second look. You never know when an ordinary-looking quarter might turn into an extraordinary discovery. Top 2. Stop before you spend a 1972 Washington quarter. At first glance, this old 25-cent coin may look like an ordinary piece of change, but once you start examining the date, mint mark, condition, and tiny details on its surfaces, the story becomes much more interesting. More than 50 years have passed since this quarter was produced, and today, collectors still examine these coins carefully because condition, varieties, and genuine mint-made errors can make one example much more interesting than another. So if you have a 1972 Washington quarter sitting in a collection, coin jar, drawer, or old box, keep it with you for a moment, because there are several important details you should check before deciding what your coin is worth. Let's begin with the basic specifications of the 1972 Washington quarter. This coin has a standard weight of 5.67 grams, a diameter of approximately 24.26 millimeters, and a thickness of about 1.75 millimeters. Its composition is copper-nickel clad, meaning the coin has outer layers containing copper and nickel bonded to a copper core. The obverse carries the familiar portrait of George Washington, while the reverse features the American eagle along with the inscriptions identifying the United States and the 25-cent denomination. These specifications are important because they give collectors a basic way to identify the coin and distinguish a genuine quarter from something that may not match the expected characteristics. Now let's focus on the mint mark, because this is one of the first details you should check. Your 1972 Washington quarter has no mint mark. For this issue, that absence is not automatically an error. Philadelphia-produced quarters from this period were struck without a mint mark, so a 1972 quarter with no mint mark can be identified as a Philadelphia issue. This is an important point for anyone searching through old quarters because sometimes collectors see an empty space where they expect a letter and immediately assume something went wrong at the mint. In this case, the absence of a mint mark is part of the normal identification of the Philadelphia issue. But don't stop there. The date and mint mark are only the beginning. The next step is to examine the overall condition of the coin. A 1972 quarter that has spent decades circulating can show plenty of wear, scratches, contact marks, and other signs of its journey through everyday commerce. Another quarter from the same year may have been stored carefully and could retain much sharper details and more attractive original surfaces. To a collector, those differences can be extremely important. Take a close look at George Washington's portrait on the front. Examine the hair, facial features, lettering, stars, and surrounding fields. Are the details sharp, or have they become smooth from years of circulation? Look at the date and make sure the digits are clearly formed. Then examine the areas around the lettering for unusual shapes, doubling, or other characteristics. However, remember that not every unusual mark is a valuable mint error. Many marks on circulated coins are simply the result of contact with other coins, machines, surfaces, or objects after the coin left the mint. Now turn the quarter over and inspect the reverse. The American eagle should have clear design details, and the surrounding lettering and stars should be examined carefully. Look at the fields around the design and check whether the surfaces appear smooth, heavily scratched, or unusually preserved. Compare the reverse with another normal Washington quarter if you have one available. Comparing coins side by side can make unusual features much easier to recognize. This is where patience becomes extremely important. Coin collecting isn't simply about finding an old date and immediately searching for a huge price. Serious collectors look at the entire coin. They consider the date, mint, condition, strike, surfaces, varieties, errors, certification, and market demand. A common circulated coin can remain a common coin even after 50 years, while an exceptional specimen can attract much more attention. Understanding that difference will help you avoid many of the exaggerated claims that appear online. One of the most important things you can do with an old coin is avoid cleaning it. If your 1972 quarter looks dirty, dull, or discolored, don't scrub it and don't polish it. Cleaning can leave scratches and unnatural surfaces that may hurt the coin's collector appeal. Original surfaces are valuable information to collectors because they show how the coin has survived over time. The safest approach is to handle the coin carefully by its edges and leave the surface as it is. Another interesting part of this quarter is its history. When you hold a 1972 Washington quarter, you're holding an object that has been around for more than half a century. Think about how many people may have handled it. It could have been used to buy something at a store, carried in someone's pocket, placed into a cash register, saved by a child, or eventually put into a collection. Every old coin has its own journey, and that history is one of the reasons coin collecting is so fascinating. If you have several 1972 quarters, this is a great opportunity to compare them. Place them side by side and examine the date, portrait, lettering, reverse design, surfaces, and overall condition. You may notice that one coin is much more worn than another. You might see differences in luster or strike quality. Comparing multiple examples is one of the best ways to train your eyes and learn what collectors look for. Now let's talk about errors and varieties. Genuine mint errors can be interesting to collectors because they occur during the manufacturing process and can create characteristics that are different from the normal design. But identifying a genuine error isn't always easy. A damaged coin can sometimes look unusual, especially after decades of circulation. That's why you should never assume that every strange mark, scratch, or distorted area is a rare error. If something looks genuinely unusual, take clear photographs, compare it with trusted numismatic references, and consider professional authentication if the potential value justifies it. The condition of a coin can also make a dramatic difference. A heavily circulated quarter may have lost much of its original detail, while an exceptionally preserved example can maintain sharp design elements and attractive surfaces. Professional grading services evaluate factors such as wear, surface preservation, strike quality, and overall appearance. Certified coins can also be easier for buyers and collectors to evaluate because an independent grading service has examined the coin and assigned a grade. This is why you should be careful whenever you see an extremely high price attached to an old coin online. A price mentioned in a video, social media post, or advertisement does not automatically mean that every coin of the same year is worth that amount. Actual market value depends on the exact specimen and its characteristics. Auction results, professional grading information, and reputable price guides are much better sources when you're trying to understand a coin's real market potential. For this video, the featured headline figure is $134,000. But remember, this is not the normal value of an ordinary circulated 1972 Washington quarter. A common 1972 Philadelphia quarter should not automatically be considered a $134,000 coin simply because it has the same date and no mint mark. An extraordinary price would require an exceptional coin and strong evidence supporting that valuation. Always verify any unusually high valuation through reputable numismatic sources and actual market evidence. So, what should you do if you have a 1972 Washington quarter? First, confirm the date. Second, check the mint mark and remember that the absence of a mint mark is normal for the Philadelphia issue. Third, examine the weight, size, and composition if you have reason to question authenticity. Fourth, carefully inspect both sides for condition, unusual characteristics, and possible genuine mint errors. And finally, never clean the coin before you have determined whether it could have collector value. If your quarter is heavily worn and looks ordinary, don't be disappointed. Coin collecting isn't only about finding a fortune. Learning about the history, design, production, and different characteristics of U.S. coins is what makes the hobby exciting. Every coin can teach you something, and sometimes the search itself is just as rewarding as the discovery. Now I want to hear from you. Do you have a 1972 Washington quarter in your collection? Does yours have no mint mark? What condition is it in? Is it heavily circulated, or does it still have strong details and original-looking surfaces? And do you have any of the other coins that I show in my videos? Give me a reply in the comments and tell me exactly which coins you have. I would love to hear about your collection and see what interesting coins are being discovered by collectors around the world. And if you enjoy Washington quarters, rare U.S. coins, old American coinage, mint errors, valuable coin discoveries, and fascinating coin stories, make sure you subscribe to U.S. Rare Coins News and turn on notifications. I have many more coins to show you, and you never know which old coin could become the next interesting discovery. So before you spend your old quarters, always take a second look, check the date, inspect the details, and learn what you're actually holding. Your next coin discovery could be waiting in the most unexpected place. Top 3, before you spend a 1973 Washington quarter, stop and take a closer look. This old 25-cent coin has been around for more than 50 years, and while many examples are ordinary, some can attract much more attention because of their condition, mint characteristics, and possible varieties or genuine mint errors. The interesting part is that you don't need to be a professional collector to begin checking your own coin. With a little patience and good lighting, you can examine the date, mint mark area, design details, and surfaces yourself. So if you have a 1973 Washington quarter in your collection, keep it nearby, because we're going to look at the important details you should know before deciding what your coin is worth. The 1973 Washington quarter is a classic United States 25-cent coin featuring George Washington on the obverse and an American eagle on the reverse. The coin weighs 5.67 grams, measures approximately 24.26 millimeters in diameter, and has a thickness of about 1.75 millimeters. Its composition is copper-nickel clad, with a copper core surrounded by outer layers containing copper and nickel. These specifications are useful when identifying the coin and checking whether an unusual piece matches the expected characteristics of a standard Washington quarter. Now let's talk about the mint mark. The 1973 Washington quarter we're discussing has no mint mark. For this period, quarters struck at the Philadelphia Mint were produced without a mint mark, so the absence of a mint mark is normal for a Philadelphia issue. This is important because many people see an empty space and immediately think a letter has somehow disappeared. That's not the case here. The missing mint mark is actually part of the coin's normal production history. But don't assume that every 1973 quarter without a mint mark is automatically rare. That's one of the most important things to understand when collecting coins. The date and mint mark are only the beginning. Collectors also look at condition, strike quality, surface preservation, luster, recognized varieties, and genuine mint errors. A heavily circulated 1973 quarter can be very different from an exceptionally preserved example, even though both coins have exactly the same date and mint origin. Start by examining the obverse. Look closely at the date 1973 and make sure all 4 digits are clear. Then study Washington's portrait, the lettering, stars, and surrounding fields. A circulated coin will normally show wear and contact marks, while a better preserved coin may retain sharper details and more original-looking surfaces. Move the coin gently under a light and examine it from different angles. Sometimes details that are difficult to see straight on become easier to notice when the light moves across the surface. Now turn the coin over and inspect the reverse. Look closely at the American eagle, the lettering, stars, and open fields around the design. Pay attention to the sharpness of the details and look for anything that appears genuinely different from the normal design. If you have another Washington quarter available, compare the 2 coins side by side. This can help you recognize normal wear and understand whether a feature is actually unusual. One important warning: don't assume every strange mark is a mint error. A genuine mint error happens during the manufacturing process, while scratches, dents, discoloration, and other damage can happen after the coin leaves the mint. A damaged coin can sometimes look very unusual, especially after decades of circulation. If you notice something that appears to be a genuine error or variety, research it carefully and consider professional authentication before assuming it has a high value. Condition is one of the biggest factors affecting collector interest. Imagine 2 1973 Washington quarters. One has been used for years and has heavy wear across the design. The other has been carefully stored and still shows strong details and attractive original surfaces. These coins may have very different collector appeal. That's why collectors and grading services pay close attention to wear, surface marks, strike quality, luster, and overall preservation. And please don't clean your old quarter. If it looks dirty or dull, leave it alone. Scrubbing or polishing can create scratches and unnatural surfaces that may reduce collector appeal. The original surface is part of the coin's history, so handle the coin carefully by its edges and keep it protected while you examine it. There's also something special about holding a 1973 quarter today. This coin has survived more than 5 decades of American history. It may have traveled through stores, pockets, cash registers, vending machines, collections, and family drawers before reaching you. You may never know exactly where your coin has been, but that history is part of what makes old coins so fascinating. If you have several 1973 quarters, compare them. Look at their dates, portraits, lettering, reverse designs, surfaces, and overall condition. You may notice that one has much stronger details than another. This kind of comparison is one of the best ways to train your eye and learn what collectors look for. Now let's talk about the price mentioned for this video. The featured headline figure is $142,000. However, this is not the normal value of every 1973 Washington quarter. An ordinary circulated Philadelphia quarter should not automatically be considered a $142,000 coin. A price at that level would require an exceptional and properly authenticated example with characteristics that justify such a valuation. Always verify extraordinary price claims through reliable numismatic sources, professional grading information, and actual market evidence. So, if you have a 1973 Washington quarter, take another look at it today. Check the date, confirm the absence of a mint mark, examine both sides carefully, and pay attention to the condition and surfaces. Don't clean it, don't polish it, and don't assume that every unusual mark is an error. The more carefully you examine your coins, the better you'll become at recognizing what is normal and what deserves further investigation. And now I want to hear from you. Do you have a 1973 Washington quarter in your collection? Does yours have no mint mark? What condition is your coin in? And do you have any of the other coins that I show in my videos? Give me a reply in the comments and tell me which coins you have. I would love to hear about your collection and your discoveries. If you enjoy Washington quarters, rare U.S. coins, valuable coin discoveries, mint errors, and old American coinage, make sure you subscribe to U.S. Rare Coins News and turn on notifications. More interesting coins are coming, and you never know when the next exciting discovery could be hiding inside an old collection or coin jar. So before you spend an old quarter, always take a second look. You might be holding a fascinating piece of American coinage history. Top 4. Before you spend a 1965 Washington quarter, stop for a moment and take a closer look. This isn't just another old quarter. The year 1965 marks one of the biggest changes in the history of the Washington quarter, because this was the first year the regular quarter changed from the traditional silver composition to the new copper-nickel clad composition. That makes the 1965 quarter an especially interesting piece of American coinage history. And if you have one sitting in an old collection, coin jar, drawer, or family box, you should know exactly what you're looking at before you decide to spend it. Let's start with the basic information. The 1965 Washington quarter has a weight of 5.67 grams, a diameter of about 24.30 millimeters, and a thickness of approximately 1.75 millimeters. Its clad construction uses outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core. The coin has the famous portrait of George Washington on the obverse and the American eagle on the reverse, with a reeded edge. These specifications make the 1965 quarter easy to recognize and also give collectors useful information when examining an old example. Now let's talk about the mint mark, because this is where the 1965 quarter becomes especially interesting. You will not find a mint mark on the regular 1965 Washington quarter. During 1965 through 1967, the United States Mint suspended mint marks, so coins from this period were produced without the normal identifying letters. This means that seeing no mint mark on your 1965 quarter is normal and should not automatically be considered an error. In fact, the absence of a mint mark is one of the characteristics that makes this period of Washington quarter history different from many other years. But there is an interesting detail that many collectors don't realize. A 1965 quarter without a mint mark does not necessarily mean it was struck only at Philadelphia. Regular business strike production involved Philadelphia and Denver, while San Francisco also produced 1965 mint mark-less quarters for the special mint set. So when you see a 1965 quarter without a mint mark, the missing letter alone cannot tell you exactly which facility produced that particular coin. This is one reason why the 1965 issue deserves a closer look than many people realize. The history behind this change is fascinating. Before 1965, Washington quarters were made from 90% silver and 10% copper. Rising silver prices and a shortage of circulating coins led the United States to introduce the clad composition. Beginning in 1965, the Washington quarter moved into a new era, using copper-nickel-clad construction over a copper core. So when you're holding a 1965 quarter, you're holding one of the first regular-issue Washington quarters from this major transition in American coinage. Now take your 1965 quarter and examine the obverse carefully. Start with the date. Make sure the numbers 1965 are clearly visible and examine their shape and condition. Then look closely at George Washington's portrait. Pay attention to the hair, face, lettering, stars, and the open areas around the design. If your coin circulated for many years, you may see scratches, contact marks, and wear. But if it was saved early in its life, you may find much sharper details and stronger original surfaces. Next, turn the coin over and study the reverse. Look at the American eagle, the lettering, the stars, and the open field surrounding the design. Don't rush this part. Move the coin slowly under a light and examine how the surfaces reflect it. A coin that has been heavily circulated will normally show more wear, while a carefully preserved example may have much stronger details and mint state characteristics. This is where condition becomes extremely important. A 1965 quarter in worn circulated condition is very different from an exceptionally preserved example. Professional grading considers factors such as wear, surface preservation, strike quality, and overall appearance. The PCGS CoinFacts page lists recognized 1965 varieties including double die obverse and double die reverse examples, showing that collectors do look beyond the date alone when studying this issue. If you think your quarter has an unusual feature, don't immediately assume that every mark is a rare mint error. A scratch, dent, gouge, discoloration, or other damage can happen after the coin leaves the mint. A genuine mint-made variety or error is different because the characteristic originates during production. If something looks unusual, compare it carefully with a normal example and use reliable numismatic references before deciding that you've discovered something rare. Another important point is the special mint set. In 1965, the mint did not issue the normal annual uncirculated coin set. Instead, it produced special mint sets containing specially prepared coins. The 1965 special mint set included a Washington quarter, and these pieces can have different surfaces and sharper appearances compared with ordinary circulation strikes. PCGS records the 1965 SMS quarter separately and notes a mintage of about 2.3 million pieces. So, if your 1965 quarter looks unusually sharp, carefully preserved, and different from the ordinary circulated quarters you've seen, it may deserve additional research. That doesn't automatically mean it's extremely valuable, but it could be an example worth examining more closely. Comparing it with other 1965 quarters can help you understand whether you're looking at a regular circulation strike, a special mint set piece, or something with another recognized characteristic. And whatever you do, don't clean the coin. If your 1965 quarter looks dark, dirty, dull, or aged, leave it alone. Scrubbing and polishing can create scratches or unnatural surfaces and may reduce collector appeal. The original surface is part of the coin's history, so handle it carefully by the edges and keep it protected. There's also something special about the story of this coin. More than 60 years have passed since 1965. This quarter could have traveled through stores, pockets, cash registers, vending machines, collections, and family drawers before reaching you. You may never know exactly where your coin has been, but that unknown history is one of the reasons old coins are so fascinating. If you have several 1965 Washington quarters, compare them together. Look at their dates, surfaces, strike, lettering, Washington's portrait, the eagle, and overall preservation. You may notice that one coin is much sharper than another. You might also find differences that deserve further research. The more examples you examine, the better your eye becomes at recognizing normal wear versus something genuinely unusual. Now let's discuss the price mentioned in this video. The featured headline figure for this video is $128,000. However, that should not be understood as the normal value of every 1965 Washington quarter. A regular circulated 1965 quarter is not automatically worth $128,000 simply because it has this date. In fact, PCGS records an auction result of $12,650 for a particular high-grade 1965 example, which shows why the exact grade and characteristics of an individual coin matter so much. So if you own a 1965 Washington quarter, don't judge it only by the date. Check its weight, examine its surfaces, study the strike, look carefully for recognized varieties, and pay attention to its overall condition. Remember that the lack of a mint mark is normal for 1965, so the missing letter by itself does not make the coin a rare error. And now I want to hear from you. Do you have a 1965 Washington quarter in your collection? How many do you have, and what condition are they in? Have you ever found a 1965 quarter with an unusual feature or especially sharp details? And do you have any of the other coins that I show in my videos? Give me a reply in the comments and tell me which coins you have. I would love to hear about your collection and your discoveries. If you enjoy Washington quarters, rare U.S. coins, old American coinage, mint errors, valuable coin discoveries, and fascinating coin history, make sure you subscribe to U.S. Rare Coins News and turn on notifications. There are many more interesting coins to examine, and sometimes the most fascinating discoveries start with a coin that looks completely ordinary. So before you spend that old 1965 quarter, take a second look, check the details, protect the original surface, and learn the story behind what you're holding. You might not have a fortune, but you could be holding an important piece of American coinage history. Top 5. What if a quarter you've been ignoring for years is actually worth taking a much closer look at? The 1974 Washington quarter may appear to be nothing more than an ordinary 25-cent coin, but this old quarter has several details that can make it fascinating to collectors. More than 50 years have passed since it was struck, and during all those years, millions of these coins disappeared into collections, coin jars, drawers, pockets, and everyday circulation. But here's the important question: what makes one 1974 quarter more interesting than another? Today, we're going to examine this coin from the date and mint mark area to its composition, condition, possible varieties, and the extraordinary price figure featured in this video. So if you have a 1974 Washington quarter, don't put it away just yet. Let's begin with the basic specifications. The 1974 Washington quarter is a copper nickel-clad 25-cent coin. It weighs 5.67 grams, has a standard diameter of about 24.30 millimeters, and is approximately 1.75 millimeters thick. Its metallic composition consists of 75% copper and 25% nickel over a pure copper center. George Washington appears on the obverse, while the reverse features the American eagle. The edge is reeded, just like other Washington quarters from this period. These details give us a useful starting point when examining a 1974 quarter and can also help confirm whether a coin has the expected characteristics. Now let's look at the mint mark, because this is one of the most important details on the coin you're examining. The 1974 Philadelphia Washington quarter has no mint mark, while quarters struck at Denver carry a D mint mark. So if your 1974 quarter has no mint mark, that identifies it as the Philadelphia issue. But remember, the absence of a mint mark is not automatically an error on a 1974 Philadelphia quarter. In fact, PCGS identifies the no mint mark 1974 quarter as a Philadelphia regular strike with a very large production of 801,456,000 pieces. That means the missing mint mark alone does not make the coin extraordinarily rare. However, that doesn't mean you should ignore your coin. Quite the opposite. The next step is to examine its condition. A 1974 quarter that spent decades circulating can show heavy wear, scratches, contact marks, and dull surfaces. Another example from the same year may have been saved shortly after production and could still show much sharper details and better preservation. Collectors and professional graders pay close attention to these differences, because a high-grade coin can be considerably more desirable than a heavily circulated example. Start with the obverse and look directly at the date. Make sure the 4 digits in 1974 are clearly visible. Then slowly examine George Washington's portrait. Look at the hair, face, lettering, stars, and the open field surrounding the design. Don't rush this examination. Hold the coin under good lighting and gently tilt it from side to side. Changes in the light can reveal scratches, contact marks, luster, and other surface characteristics that may be difficult to notice when the coin is viewed straight on. Now turn the coin over and examine the reverse. The American eagle is the central feature, surrounded by stars and inscriptions. Look carefully at the eagle's design details, the lettering, and the surrounding fields. If you have another 1974 Washington quarter available, place the two coins side by side. Compare their surfaces, details, strike, and overall appearance. This simple comparison can teach you a lot because you can immediately see how circulation and preservation affect the appearance of coins from the same year. One of the most important things to remember is that not every unusual-looking mark is a mint error. A genuine mint error or die variety originates during the manufacturing process, while scratches, dents, gouges, stains, and other damage can happen after the coin enters circulation. Sometimes post-mint damage can look very dramatic, especially on an older coin. So if you notice something unusual, don't immediately assume you found a rare error. Study the feature carefully and compare it with reliable numismatic information before drawing a conclusion. Condition is especially important with the 1974 Philadelphia quarter because the issue was produced in very large numbers. PCGS reports that many examples survive, and ordinary examples are generally easy for collectors to obtain. But higher grades are a different story. The PCGS price guide shows that values can rise substantially as the grade increases, and the finest examples are much more difficult to find than ordinary circulated coins. This is why two 1974 quarters can look similar at first but have very different collector appeal once their condition is examined carefully. If your quarter looks unusually sharp, don't immediately clean it to make it look even better. This is a very important rule for coin collectors. Cleaning, polishing, rubbing, or using chemicals can damage the original surface and leave marks that collectors don't want to see. If the coin is naturally dark or has developed an aged appearance, leave it alone. Handle it carefully by the edges and keep it protected. Original surfaces are part of the coin's history, and preserving them is usually much safer than trying to make an old coin look new. There is also something fascinating about the history of this quarter. When you hold a 1974 Washington quarter today, you're holding a coin that has survived more than 5 decades. Think about all the places it could have traveled. It may have been used in a store, carried in someone's pocket, placed inside a cash register, saved by a child, or eventually inherited by another collector. You may never know exactly where your individual coin has been, but that unknown journey is part of what makes old coins so interesting. The 1974 issue also gives collectors another opportunity to learn about mint production. The Philadelphia issue had no mint mark, while the Denver issue carried a D. There was also a San Francisco proof issue with an S mint mark. So when you're examining a 1974 quarter, don't look only at the date. Look at the mint mark area as well. That tiny letter, or the absence of one, can tell you which issue you're dealing with. If you have several 1974 quarters, this is the perfect time to compare them. Put them on a clean surface and examine each one individually. Check the dates, mint marks, Washington's portrait, lettering, reverse eagle, surfaces, and overall preservation. Which one has the strongest details? Which one has the fewest contact marks? Which one has the most attractive original appearance? By comparing several examples, you can start developing the eye that experienced collectors use when examining coins. You should also remember that a coin's age doesn't automatically determine its value. Being more than 50 years old is interesting, but age alone doesn't turn a common coin into a rare one. Collector value can depend on rarity, condition, grade, varieties, errors, certification, and demand. That's why it's important to look at the entire coin rather than focusing only on the year printed on the obverse. Now we come to the price featured in this video. The headline figure we're mentioning is $130,000. But this should not be interpreted as the normal value of every 1974 Washington quarter. An ordinary circulated 1974 Philadelphia quarter is not automatically worth $130,000 simply because it has no mint mark. In fact, PCGS lists a recorded auction result of $2,115 for a particularly high-grade 1974 Philadelphia example, showing just how important the exact grade and condition can be. So if you have a 1974 Washington quarter with no mint mark, take a careful look, but don't make a decision based on the date alone. Confirm that the coin matches the expected specifications, examine the mint mark area, study the surfaces, check the condition, and look for genuine characteristics that could make your particular example more interesting. If something looks unusual, document it clearly and research that specific feature rather than assuming the coin is valuable simply because it is old. Let's quickly review the key information one more time. The 1974 Washington quarter is a copper-nickel-clad coin with a copper core. It weighs 5.67 grams, measures approximately 24.30 millimeters in diameter, and is about 1.75 millimeters thick. A 1974 Philadelphia quarter has no mint mark, while other 1974 issues can be identified by their mint marks. The coin features George Washington on the front and the American eagle on the reverse. These basic details give you a strong foundation for examining your own quarter. And now I want to hear from you. Do you have a 1974 Washington quarter in your collection? Does yours have no mint mark, or does it have a D or S? What condition is your coin in? Have you ever found a 1974 quarter with an unusual feature? And do you have any of the other coins that I show in my videos? Give me a reply in the comments and tell me which coins you have. I would love to hear about your collection and your discoveries, and your comment could help another collector recognize an interesting coin they already have at home. If you enjoy Washington quarters, rare U.S. coins, old American coinage, mint errors, valuable coin discoveries, and fascinating coin history, make sure you subscribe to U.S. Rare Coins News and turn on notifications. There are many more coins waiting to be examined, and sometimes the most interesting discoveries begin with a coin that looks completely ordinary. So before you spend that old 1974 Washington quarter, take one more look at the date, check the mint mark area, study the surfaces, and protect the coin exactly as you found it. You never know when a small detail can turn an ordinary-looking quarter into a coin worth investigating. Top 6. What if the 1970 Washington quarter in your collection is more interesting than you ever realized? At first glance, it looks like a simple 25-cent coin, but 1970 was produced during an important period in American coinage, and this particular quarter carries a D mint mark that tells us where it was made. More than half a century has passed since this coin entered circulation, and over all those years, countless examples have been spent, saved, worn down, or placed into collections. So before you put a 1970 D Washington quarter back into a box or spend it as ordinary change, take a closer look, because the small details can tell a much bigger story. Let's begin with the basic specifications of this 1970 Washington quarter. The coin has a weight of approximately 5.67 grams, a diameter of about 24.26 millimeters, and a thickness of approximately 1.75 millimeters. It is made from copper-nickel-clad material, with outer layers containing copper and nickel bonded to a copper core. George Washington appears on the obverse, while the reverse displays the American eagle and the inscriptions identifying the United States and the 25-cent denomination. The quarter also has a reeded edge, a familiar characteristic of Washington quarters from this period. Now look closely at the mint mark. This coin carries a D mint mark, which identifies it as a Denver Mint issue. On Washington quarters of this era, the mint mark can be found on the obverse near the lower right area of Washington's neck. That small letter may look insignificant, but it is actually one of the most useful identifying features on the coin. When you're searching through old quarters, always check the mint mark area because the same date can exist with different mint marks and different production histories. But here's something important. A D mint mark alone does not automatically make a 1970 quarter extremely rare or worth a huge amount of money. The 1970 D quarter was produced in large numbers, so an ordinary circulated example is generally not considered a rare coin simply because it has a D. What makes your individual coin more interesting is everything else you find when you examine it: its condition, strike, surfaces, possible varieties, and any genuine mint-made characteristics. Start your inspection on the obverse. Look carefully at the date 1970. Are all 4 digits clear? Do the numbers show normal wear, or are they unusually sharp? Next, examine George Washington's portrait. Look at the hair, facial details, lettering, stars, and the open fields around the design. A coin that spent years in circulation will naturally develop wear and contact marks, while a coin that was protected soon after production may retain much sharper details and better original surfaces. Now slowly turn the coin under a good light. Watch how the surface reflects the light as you change the angle. This can help you identify scratches, contact marks, wear, and remaining mint luster. Don't use anything abrasive on the coin, and don't try to make the surface shinier. You want to see the coin in its original condition because that is what collectors and professional graders evaluate. Next, turn the quarter over and examine the reverse. The American eagle should be clearly visible, with the surrounding lettering and stars. Look at the eagle's details and examine the open fields around the design. Pay attention to areas where wear normally appears. If you have another 1970 Washington quarter, compare the two coins side by side. A comparison can make differences in strike, wear, and surface preservation much easier to recognize. This is also where you should be careful about supposed errors. A strange mark doesn't automatically mean you have a valuable mint error. A genuine mint error is created during the manufacturing process, while scratches, dents, gouges, stains, and other forms of damage can happen after the coin leaves the mint. Some damage can look surprisingly unusual, especially on an old circulated coin. So if you see something that looks different, don't immediately assume it is rare. Take clear photographs, compare the feature with trusted references, and seek professional help if the characteristic appears significant. Condition can be one of the biggest differences between two coins from the same year. Imagine having two 1970 D quarters. One has spent decades in circulation and has heavy wear across Washington's portrait and the eagle. The other was carefully stored and still has strong details, attractive surfaces, and much of its original appearance. Both are 1970 D quarters, but collectors can have very different levels of interest in them. Exceptional grades can be much harder to find than ordinary circulated examples. And this is why you should never clean an old quarter. If your 1970 D looks dark, dirty, dull, or aged, leave it alone. Scrubbing, polishing, or using chemicals can damage the original surface and leave scratches or unnatural-looking areas. Instead, hold the coin carefully by its edges and keep it in a protective holder. Preserving the coin exactly as you found it is much safer than trying to make an old coin look brand new. The history behind the 1970 Washington quarter is another reason this coin is worth appreciating. More than 50 years have passed since this quarter was struck. During those decades, it could have traveled through stores, pockets, cash registers, vending machines, and collections. It might have been saved by someone who simply liked old coins, forgotten in a drawer, or passed from one generation to another. You may never know the complete journey of your particular quarter, but that mystery is part of the fun of collecting. If you have multiple 1970 D Washington quarters, compare them carefully. Look at the dates, mint marks, Washington portrait, lettering, stars, reverse eagle, surfaces, and overall condition. Which coin has the strongest details? Which one has the fewest marks? Which one appears to have the best preservation? By comparing several examples, you can begin to recognize the characteristics that separate an ordinary circulated coin from a coin that deserves closer attention. Another important lesson is that age alone does not determine value. A coin can be more than 50 years old and still be relatively common. Collector value is influenced by factors such as rarity, condition, grade, varieties, errors, certification, and market demand. That's why you should never assume that a 1970D quarter is valuable simply because it is old. Instead, investigate the exact characteristics of the individual coin in your hand. Now let's talk about the price featured in this video. The headline figure we're mentioning is $134,000. But this should not be interpreted as the normal value of every 1970D Washington quarter. An ordinary circulated example is not automatically worth $134,000 simply because it has the 1970 date and AD mint mark. A valuation at that extraordinary level would require an exceptional and properly authenticated coin with characteristics that strongly support such a price. Always verify unusually high price claims through reputable auction records, professional grading information, and trusted numismatic sources. So, if you have a 1970D Washington quarter, don't judge it only by the date or mint mark. Start with the basics. Confirm the 1970 date, locate the D mint mark, examine the weight and dimensions if necessary, study both sides, and carefully inspect the surfaces and overall condition. Look for genuine characteristics that make your individual coin different, but remember that ordinary wear and damage should not be confused with a true mint error. Let's quickly review the important information. This 1970 Washington quarter weighs approximately 5.67 grams, has a diameter of about 24.26 millimeters according to the specifications used for this video, and is approximately 1.75 millimeters thick. It has a copper-nickel clad composition, George Washington on the obverse, the American Eagle on the reverse, and AD mint mark identifying the Denver Mint issue. These details give you a strong foundation for examining your own 1970D quarter. And now I want to hear from you. Do you have a 1970D Washington quarter in your collection? How many do you have, and what condition are they in? Have you ever noticed an unusual feature on one of your 1970D quarters? And do you have any of the other coins that I show in my videos? Give me a reply in the comments and tell me which coins you have. I would love to hear about your collection and your discoveries, and your comment could help another collector recognize an interesting coin they already have at home. If you enjoy Washington quarters, rare U.S. coins, old American coinage, mint errors, valuable coin discoveries, and fascinating coin history, make sure you subscribe to U.S. Rare Coins News and turn on notifications. There are many more coins waiting to be examined, and sometimes the most interesting discovery begins with a coin that looks completely ordinary. So before you spend that old 1970D Washington quarter, take another look at the date, check the D mint mark, study the surfaces, and protect the coin exactly as you found it. You never know when a small detail could turn an ordinary-looking quarter into something that deserves a much closer look.